How about now? All right. The AV guy forgot to turn the mute off. I had a dream last night that I started 5 minutes late. I'm 3 minutes, so I'm doing better than my dream. So Alan and Miles are passing out. It's a take-home sheet. It's notes that I've come up with over the past year that I've been researching this. And I plan on having something like this every week. So if you like it, please let me know. If you don't, let me know, and I won't waste the paper. Today starts a new quarter in the auditorium class. Last week, Steve stole one of my classes, and that was fun. And then I lose another class because of Cane Ridge. So we're going to have 11 classes. I'll put up an agenda here in just a minute. But this quarter, we're going to be talking about honoring God through worship. What worship is, why we worship. It's something that I've wanted to teach for about a year, and I finally got an open slot. So this is the class. So the objective for what we're doing in here, deepening our understanding of worship as a sacred privilege and a personal responsibility. We're also going to explore what worship is, why it matters, and how to engage meaningfully. The engaging meaningfully will come later as we look at each element of the worship service. This right here, and I know this is kind of an eye chart, but this is the agenda roughly that I've come out with. You'll see that there are 10 lessons up there, meaning that I've got one more to fill. And maybe you all have an opinion on what I teach on that last week. And if not, I'll come up with something else. This class really started because while I was out on my daily walks, I started listening to Brother Wendell Winkler. House to House, Heart to Heart had a series of his classes online. I think there were 23. I've been able to cull those down to about 22. Guys, I think I'm just a bit hot. But Brother Winkler did a fantastic job. And once I decided, okay, this is the class that I'm going to do, I went back to start to listen to class 1 again. The next day I went back and there were no classes. And I said, oh no. So I emailed the guy at House to House, Heart to Heart, and I said, oh, so what went on, or what's going on? Where are these classes? He said, oh, we had a server crash last night. We've lost everything. I said, oh no. He said it was about a year ago, because he was getting ready for PTP over in Branson. He said, wait till after PTP, I'll see if I can get it. Cannot remember the guy's name, I can't find the email, but he was able to find them all. They're still not on the website, but I do have a copy. So if you all want to hear Brother Winkler give this series of lessons, let me know and I can give you access to it. But I was very, very, very thankful that they were able to find those and email them to me. Also, I've looked at a pamphlet out here in the lobby. It's over here, or it's down in the education wing, by Phil Sanders. He had a series of lessons on worship. That is out there. It's 5 different lessons, I think. Brother Sanders did just a wonderful job. A lot of you probably know this book by Ira North. It's called Balance. It is about growing a church, not just numerically, but also the health of the church. I've read this a couple of times. Bart Rogers gave me a copy of it. He was telling me about it. He goes, Paul, I've got a copy. I'll give it to you. I've read this. If you all have not read this, I highly recommend it. Steve, this was written in the 70s, I think. Okay, so one of Steve's first books. So he's been around since, at least 2 years ago. So it's a great book. It really is. And we're going to touch on a lot of pieces of what Brother North has to say about worship as well. And then, of course, the Bible. We've all got the same access to the Bible. If you don't have access to the Bible, please let me know. We will make sure you get that. But this is our blueprint, the Bible. And we want to make sure that what we do in the next hour is biblical. And so we're going to be looking at all of that. So the theme of this whole class series is the sacred privilege of worship. And I think that's something that we don't think of very often, is that worship is a privilege. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. Key terms, if you look at the sentence above, it's those terms. Worship, sacred, and privilege. And then we're going to reflect on worship as that sacred privilege. And this says a matter of grave importance. It's very important that we get this right. God has called us to worship, and we need to worship Him the way He has outlined in the Bible. I found this quote. I can't remember where I found it now, but if one cannot worship in church, the church may be at fault, or the person may be. Any thoughts on that? B?
There could be some activities going on that is not worship. Therefore, you can't.
Right. All right. So B says there are some things that may be going on in a church service that aren't biblical. And because of that, we can't worship truth in truth and spirit. Any other comments? Sandy. Right. Right, and what Sandy talks about is the distractions that come in our life or maybe in the building, and we're going to actually talk about that quite a bit. We'll touch on it a little bit today, but there's also one lesson that I have about distractions in the worship service. So we will get into that. What comes to mind when you hear the word worship? What does that mean? Paying homage. A kiss toward God. And we're actually going to get into the meaning in just a minute. Okay, so we may be saying, why in the world are we studying this? That's a picture of me whenever I was 2 or 3 or something like that. And I will tell you, if anybody in the world has a picture of me, it's that one. I don't know how many my parents bought. It had to be in the thousands because those things are everywhere. I talked to a cousin of mine. My aunt passed away just a few weeks ago, and I was texting her back and forth about some things. She goes, "I still have that picture on my dresser. This picture right here." Why in the world she has that picture, I have no idea. Bart was doing some stuff at my mom and dad's house, and he looked at that, and he thought it was Shelby. I don't really see it, but anyway, he thought that was Shelby. But why are we doing this? I grew up in the church. I was never taught how to worship. And I think that that's something that we often miss, at least me. We're taught we're supposed to go to church. We're taught we're supposed to sing, but we're not really told why. Yeah, we're singing praises to God. We're hearing Parker preach. We're praying. But what does that really mean to us? What should it mean to us? And maybe this study is really for me. Maybe nobody else needs this. But I wish I could go back and tell 2-year-old Paul or 3-year-old Paul more about what worship was. We went to church every Sunday. I was in Bible class from a little boy all the way up. But I don't ever remember having Bible lessons on why we worship. It was mostly how do you act as a Christian, which is, we need that. But the fundamental reasons for worship, I was never taught. So, maybe we can say some things in here that will get you thinking about your children, your grandchildren, your nieces, nephews. And plus, I mean, come on, that's just adorable, right? I had to put that up here. So is worship a duty an obligation? Is it a responsibility? Do we have to do this? What's that? All of them? Other thoughts? Absolutely yes. And I put it in too small a font, but worship the Lord your God and serve him only. That's out of the ESV, Matthew 4:10. So it's absolutely something that we should do. We are commanded to do. But what we want to do is get to a place where it's should to we get to. And I got to tell you guys, that's something that Paul Glenn still struggles with. It's a privilege to be here. But do I always think of it as a privilege to come and worship God? And again, I say I struggle with this. So why do we worship? We worship because of God, who he is. He is the I am. He always was. He always will be. We have the honor to come into his presence and worship him. We also worship him because of what he has done. And I'll let my tablet go off, sorry. I want to go back for just a minute. This yes. In Genesis 17:3, when God appears to Abram, Abram fell down and spoke with God. This act of falling face down is a demonstration of humility and submission before the Almighty. The Magi, upon finding the Christ child, fell down and worshiped him. Saul fell down on the ground on the road to Damascus. John fell down as though dead when he saw Jesus in Revelation 1:17. They fell down because of who they were in the presence of. The great I am. We worship God because of what he's done for us. You go outside and you see nature. You go up in a plane and you can see a lot more of nature. And if you look down at the cars that go by or the people that are standing around, if you're low enough, I often wonder why in the world does the great Creator care about someone so insignificant, so small on this planet? Not only does he care, but he has redeemed us. He sent his only Son to come to earth and to give himself for us so that we can be redeemed. We worship him because of what he's done. We worship him because of what he's doing. He answers our prayers. Maybe not always the way we want. Maybe not always on the timeline that we want. But he does answer them. And I am so thankful that he answered no to me several times. I wouldn't be where I am today because if he had answered yes to a few things. And I'm very grateful for that. He's also caring. He cares for every one of us. The thought of such a one as we have described and what he is doing should overwhelm us. Worship is not coming here sitting down in a pew. Worship should be engaging. Whenever we sing a song, we shouldn't just be singing the words. They should have meaning to us. And we'll get into that at a later lesson. I think that we have outstanding song leaders here. They do a great job singing or leading our songs, and I think that they help direct our minds as we go to God in worship. So what is worship? That's the Greek word. I'm not even going to try. The meaning is throwing oneself on the ground to show respect and awe. We talked about Abram. We talked about the Magi, Saul and John. They fell to the ground to show respect in the presence of God. We can expand on that definition just a little bit by saying it's a profound reverence. Barbara said it's a kiss toward God. It's adoration, sacred acts, and serving. And so whenever we go through the acts, whenever we go through worship in the next hour, we should be thinking about adoration, offering gifts, and serving God. Our songs to God should be to praise Him. They should be uplifting to the people next to us, whether you can sing well or not. Any questions or comments about this before we move on? I don't know who would name their children 3 B's like that. It's a tongue twister. But he was a gospel preacher, and you can find his several of his books still in circulation. Apologetics Press has a version, or they have a series of books that have been around for a long time. And this is a quote: "Worship is man's response to God's revelation of himself. Because God revealed himself to us in many ways, creation, sending his Son, we should worship him because of what he has done for us. If we didn't know about God, we wouldn't be able to worship him, but he has revealed himself to us." Worship should be internal. There should be a heartfelt response as we're doing the worship. Simply going through the acts is not what we need to be doing. If you open your Bibles to Matthew 15, 8 and 9. A couple of verses that we are very familiar with. This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. Jesus expected us to worship God. And it wasn't just to pay lip service. There's a meaning behind the acts that we do. Worship is also vertical. Hebrews 12:28. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe. That verse tells us that our worship should be vertical. It is to God. And it says acceptable to God, so that means that there is a way to worship God that's not acceptable. So again, that's why we're going through this. And then worship is intentional. Colossians 3:16, another verse that we all know very well. We typically will bring this up whenever we're talking about singing. But listen to it. The word of Christ dwell in you richly. Let the word of God, Christ, dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God. There's action there. A person doesn't accidentally worship God. You can come in here and you can sing and you can do things, but that it's not an accident that you're here. And if we are worshiping God the way we should, there is a lot of action to it. And we need to be thinking about that as we go through the worship service. Comments or questions on this? Guys, I got 15 minutes left. I don't know if I've got enough material. We're going to get out of here early if we don't do some talking. Okay. So why does worship matter? Well, we've already talked about several things, reasons why worship matters. Depending on your version, worship is mentioned over 190 times in the Bible. Cain and Abel, if you go back to that story, the second conflict, I'll say that in air quotes, second conflict that God had with man was with Cain and Abel, and it was over worship. What was the problem here? Guys, I've got 13 minutes. Right, thank you, Sandy. So Cain is the one that was the farmer. He did not worship God. He did not present God the offering that he should have. We don't know what that is. We can speculate all day long. But there was an incorrect way, even all the way back to the beginning. Parker? So if you didn't hear Parker, he was talking about how Abel offered with faith. If you go back to Hebrews, it says Abel gave his offering through faith. Cain, again, he didn't have his heart right. He wasn't doing what he needed to. He didn't have the faith. There was something wrong with Cain's offering. And again, there can be something wrong with our offering. Why worship matters? Because it brings us in God's presence. I heard a preacher a long time ago. I don't know when it was. It may have been 2-year-old Paul. I don't know. But he said, in this assembly today, you have God on one side. He actually said Jesus on one side. And then Satan is standing right over there. We have the opportunity to worship God, or as we sit in the pew, as we're going through the motions, we can let Satan over here distract us. As we come into the building for worship service, we need to think we are coming in God's presence. We get to commune with God. I'll wait. Worship also matters by transforming us. Our relationship with God is strengthened as we come. It should strengthen. Let me say that. It also builds relationships between all of us. You know, David mentioned on Wednesday night, we had Ron Hoskins that came down here last Sunday. And he told us he was struggling. He let his church family know that he was going through some difficult times. That should move us. I don't know how many people came down. I was down here whenever he was here. I went back up there and I came down. There was a line around him. This church is tremendous whenever someone comes forward. You all wrap your arms around that person and let them know that we care for them. That's part of worship. We're strengthened as we are here. We have a lot of families that are on vacation right now. And I can tell where some of these people should be sitting, and those seats are empty. We miss people whenever they aren't here. We've got a team in Honduras right now. We miss them. And so whenever we worship, those bonds that we have should strengthen. How has worship shaped your life? If we can sit here and say, it really hadn't done anything, then we're doing things wrong. And I got to say, I have been in times in my life where I came to worship services and I didn't feel any better. That's not a God problem. That was a Paul problem. We've got to come into this building ready to worship. And there were lots of times that I did not come that way. We can't expect to sit here, David or Randy or John or somebody gets up here to lead singing, and immediately think, okay, I'm in a mindset to worship. That's not the way this works. As you get ready in the morning to come here, do you ever say a prayer about what you're about to do? What you get to do? Do you get enough sleep at night? I will tell you, I stayed up a little bit later last night going over this lesson because I'm really worried about this series of lessons. So I stayed up extra, so maybe I didn't get enough rest. But we can't come into the building and just think it's going to turn on whenever somebody gets up here. That's just not the way this works. And guys, again, I'm speaking more to me. I know how I've come into this building and other buildings before. So don't think that I'm calling you all out. I'm really calling myself out. So how has worship shaped your lives? Sandy. I, agree. James, you. Mm-hmm.
So what was Cain and Abel's intent? And today, as Christians, for me, I grew up in a uh, not part of the church. So I grew up and moving a lot and experienced a lot of different denominations and knowing what intent looks like. Is your intent to worship God in spirit and truth, or is it to put on a show?
Yep.
Is it to worship God in spirit and truth the way He is prescribed and He wants to be worshipped, or are you doing it for the guys outside you or for what's online, or a lot of different intents? And we carry that over into our lives outside of here, on a Monday morning or Monday evening, whatever. A lot of people that I know and I'm families with, whatever, many of us probably like this, what is their intent in worship? Because they believe, a lot of people in the denominational world believe that all life and all action is worship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. It's the intent. So, it could be about music on the radio. It could be about going to whatever. Is you have to look at what is your intent. Is your intent to go there and worship God in a manner that He has prescribed? And then before you get, like here, you're right, the encouragement that we as Christians here enjoy by not just coming forward, but by helping one another and the event is it continues to strengthen. I mean, even long after you leave the building.
Yeah, and after you leave the building, I think that's the important part. The strength that we get out of the bonds around us should not end whenever we leave the building. Yeah, Brett, you're exactly right, and we're at time. I am going to finish with this comment. It's kind of what Brett was just talking about. I grew up in the church, like a lot of you did, and I will never be able to truly understand what it's like to not be part of a church. I hope I never have that. People that come to us in this building, people that come to God later in life, have a completely different outlook on what worship is that I will truly never be able to understand. Thank you all very much. I didn't get through everything. We got through most of it. I appreciate your comments. It helps me out. But be praying for this class. Be praying for me as I prepare for this. Like I said, I'm honestly worried about teaching this. It's such a heavy subject. But I appreciate everybody's time today.